Audio check. Groovy. Hi, I'm Dave, and I'm a woodturner. I started this channel to help others become a better woodturner myself, to become a better demonstrator, a better presenter, and a better educator. Today's broadcast is unscheduled, but I had a project I was working on yesterday that came apart on the lathe, so I am processing another piece of lumber to replace that piece. What I was working on, in fact, let's get that real quick. So we have this finished lidded box, and what I was turning yesterday was a inset drawer, and that came apart on the lathe. So I'm turning a new inset drawer for this lidded box, and be adding a antler handle to it, as this is also an antler handle, so they will match. Let me set this aside. And that's kind of what we'll be working today. So thanks for joining me. This is a live interactive broadcast. It's also fairly unscripted. I usually have an idea of what I might be working on, or a topic I want to discuss. And then where it goes from there, we just kind of write it out and see. So today I have a piece of honey locust here. Now this is basically the quarter. Well, let's see, that would be the center basically. So this would be a quarter of a log-ish. And I parted this out. So this has been sitting in my wood pile since August or September of last year. So it may still be, because it's a dense wood, it may still be releasing some water. We're going to find out while we turn it. What I'm looking for right now, though, is I want to be where all my cracks are. So I'm grabbing a marker here, and I'm just drawing where the cracks are and pretty much where they end. And that gives me an idea sometimes of the depth of the crack. Actually, it looks like that continues all the way up there. That's bark. Finish that off. No cracks here, although we do have a branch that had grown out of here, and then it got grown over by the rest of the tree. Looks like, let's count them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. So 16 years ago, there was a branch that had grown here, and it either got cut off or snapped off. Here it dried out, but the tree grew over it. And I say that because this tree was cut down last August or September, and then I processed it and put it in my wood pile. So about 16 years ago, that happened. So it's kind of cool to take a look at your lumber sometimes and read the story that's in it if you can. Here we've got some bark inclusion. I don't know how deep that goes. We will find out. No cracks here. I'm not expecting this bark to actually stay on at all once we get to that point of turning. There's a crack. All right, there's crack. That goes into there. And these cracks are just the result of the drying process of the tree. And one of the main reasons, at least, and especially for honey locust, it's a very dense wood, but one of the main reasons the cracks aren't going all the way through is that somewhere over in here was the pith on this side. And you can tell that by the ring structure here. I got rid of the pith. What a log does when it wants to dry, and we'll just draw that right here. So we'll call that the pith of a log, and that'd be the outside of the log. So if we cut that off, the log wants to dry. It wants to shrink around the pith in the center, that little bitty dot. And all that lumber can't get into that dot. So what happens is it'll start to get a split, and it'll get a crack. And then maybe you'll have one over here. So if we do a cross-ish side view here, you'd have a crack running all the way down through, sometimes right into the pith. Maybe one over here. But anyway, that's what happens with the drying process in a tree. So with processing lumber, if I have to leave it sit for a little bit, I want to get rid of that pith so that the tree itself, the wood is now trying to shrink around itself. And so you'll get these little stress cracks, and oftentimes they don't go very deep as the wood dries out. There's another crack I didn't mark. There's one, and there's a few. So these are just kind of raise out the tree trying to squeeze together and do its movement. The fibers of the wood are not all the same. You can see that by the difference in the width of the rings. That tells a story too. You sometimes the tighter the rings, the more weight that part has to actually hold up. So this doesn't grow as strong. And vice versa. Also, with the different seasons, we can see that one and all these late season rings are very, very similar in width. It's the other rings, the early season rings, that the tree grew faster over here, not as fast over there, for whatever reason that might have been. Let's get that crack marked. Sometimes they're a little hard to see. And so when I'm processing lumber, I want to look at all that. I don't want to throw a piece of lumber on the lathe that has a ton of cracks all over it. I don't want it to fly apart on the lathe. And possibly cause injury to myself, or if anybody else is here with me, or damage to any equipment or anything that I have in the shop. I want to keep the lumber as secure on the lathe as I possibly can while I'm working it. What I'm going to do with this piece of lumber is I'm actually going to cut all the corners off. We're going to turn it around. Basically, I'll be cutting air as I'm cutting the corners off because it's not round. The tool won't be able to contact the wood until we have rounded it out all the way around. So in fact, I'll be cutting the corners off and cutting air. And I wanted to explain the process of how I get a piece of lumber on the lathe. Pardon me, I'm peeling off some bark here. How I start with a piece of lumber on the lathe. All right, so let's pan back down. Let me see if I can straighten this guy out. And I appreciate you bearing with me. As I've said in the past, I have one camera set up. It doesn't have a zoom. It has just an automatic focus and the microphone on it as well. And so I do have a Ko-fi page, which is a donation page. If you like what you see and you'd like to support this channel, please visit my Ko-fi page. I do have a goal set up there to buy a better camera and a video switcher so I can have more than one angle instead of having to move this camera every time. All right, so here I am. I've got my, and thank you, by the way. So here I've got my lumber. I'm ready to put it between centers. I normally start everything between centers. And I've extended the points here on my drive and live center so that I can set the lumber up there, up against that point. And then I'll bring the tailstock point into it. And I'll push them both into the wood a little bit by turning the crank on the tailstock here. And then back it off just a little bit so that it has free movement. And what I'm looking for is the heavy spot. The log will want to turn, the lumber will want to turn to wherever it's heaviest, will go down to the bottom. So I start off here on the headstock, and I loosen the tailstock and bring this up about 1/4 of an inch this time. Let's see what that does. All right, so it's still heavy in the bottom. So I've already moved this one up. I now want to move this one up. So I go to the tailstock, back off the tailstock and raise it about 1/4 of an inch. Whoops, turning that the wrong way. Then I'll set it on the points. Still heavy in the bottom. And I'll get it set to where wherever I place the wood, it wants to stay. All right, so I think I got a little bit of heavy spot. Yep. All right, so raise this up. Try again. Okay, still got a heavy spot. So now I go back here. Bring my light up a little bit and move it up about 1/4 of an inch. All right, so it's moving freely. I see I still have a heavy spot. So I'll do that back and forth until I find my balance point. Make sure it's spinning freely. And it's backed off of that. All right, still got a little bit. I'm going to raise the tailstock just a little bit more. I went too far. Roll it all the way over. So now I'm moving it about 1/8 of an inch. Just a little bit less to see. There we go. Still got a little bit to go. That's interesting. All right, so I'm going to move this one up a touch. Grab that in and back it off a bit. Where does that put me? So I got a little bit of weight now still in the bottom, so I'll take my tailstock up just maybe about 1/16 of an inch. I don't go too far. I probably went too far there. All right, just a touch. All right, so as I turn it and take my hand away, it stays put. So I found my balance point now. So I'm going to tighten down my tailstock and make sure that my lumber is secure against my drive center. I want to get it to a point where it's very difficult for me to move it. I'm using a Thompson drive center. It's not a spur center or anything like that, not a tooth center. It has one single tooth, just a circle. And that will grip the wood very, very well as it goes across the grain of the wood it digs in. But what it does for me is that if there is a point where the wood stops spinning for some reason, I get a catch, or I'm too aggressive and I stop the wood with the tool, the drive center can still spin and the drive on the lathe won't be damaged. So I'm going to start down on this end. I'm going to make sure I clear my tool rest. And I'm starting, actually I got to change my Reeves drive here to the lowest speed. I want to start at the lowest speed. So I don't start immediately walking if that's a possibility, but I'm on my balance point, so I shouldn't see that much vibration, and that's why I get it on the balance point to begin with, so that it spins and I can speed up the lathe. As I'm cutting the corners off, you see the tool can make contact here on this corner, but then there is a whole gap here until I get to the next corner, and so on and so on all the way around. So basically that's called cutting air. I'm cutting a whole lot of air and very little wood until those corners get cut down and I have a round surface. Then I'm cutting all wood once it's round. So I've got to start a little slow, but I've got it on the balance point. So that means that I should be able to speed it up a little bit and be cutting air less time cutting air. It's going by much quicker. So let's start the lathe. See, I don't really have a lot of vibration. That's a big chunk of wood there. So I'm starting at about 400 RPM. I don't have a lot of vibration. I'm going to leave it there. Shut the lathe down just for a second. And I'm going to make this round. Now, there's a ton of ways to do that. I'm paying attention to where my cracks are here, where they show up as I cut down into the wood. There's a bunch of ways to do this. Some people use a roughing gouge. Maybe you might use a skew if you have the right setup. Use a bowl gouge most of the time, just to cut right into the lumber and get it down around as quickly as I can. That way, really, I don't have to have so many tools hanging around my shop, so many tools hanging around my lathe. I can use one tool for multiple tasks. So, I've got my anchor set now, ABCs of turning, anchor, bevel, cut. So I've got my anchor set here. I'm anchored on the tool rest. I'm anchored against my body. I am shifting my body until I want it to go, and I'm using my tiller hand, which is my right hand, which the handle is anchored against my body, to rotate the flute open and closed. I want to have the flute somewhere in the neighborhood of about 45 degrees pointed. This being 0 and this being 90. Don't want to go in it with 90 because that's catch territory. And then it's just thumb pressure, and I'm only cutting as fast as the tool can cut. So you hear that tick, tick, tick. And tick, tick, tick means that I'm not cutting wood all the way around. I'm cutting air. So you can see where I've cut down through here, and I've got a little bit of a round. I don't know if you can see that well on the camera. As I get further in, you'll see that it's rounding out. But I've only got in about half an inch. And so where the circle is stopped on the outside of the log is here. So I guess that's close to 3/4, and here. So I've got that much air I'm cutting, not making contact with the wood. So I need to make sure that I'm anchored and my bevel is pointed in the right direction, and I'm cutting only as fast as the tool itself can cut. Now, granted, with rough and gouge, and I would want a much wider tool rest to be able to use rough and gouge across all of this. You'd be going back and forth and back and forth. And I'm doing the same thing. I'm just taking deeper cuts into the wood. Excuse me, into the wood, into the lumber that I wouldn't be taking with a rough and gouge. So I'm going to move my tailstock or my tool rest down. I'm going to make sure that I'm going to clear it when the lumber comes around. So I've got it set. That's going to clear, and I'll continue my way down. And I want to explain. Let me grab my pencil. You see that very well? Yes, you can. Okay, so these ridges here, I'm going to outline them in graphite. So these ridges here are basically depth gauges for me. So when my tool is coming into the lumber, not only is it telling me the width of my cut, but it also tells me it's an indication that I'm may be getting close to the wing here, and I don't want to contact the whole wing on this tool. I only want to contact at most 2/3 of this. Because I'm not really, you could really hog off, but I try to stay off that wing as much as possible, the very end of that wing, so that I don't get the extra torque that might turn the tool and pull it into the lumber, and we have a catastrophic design change. So you see, as I'm going in, you'll see that I'm cutting in, and these ridges, I leave these ridges to give me basically a depth, but also a width of cut. A visual indication. So I need to move my tool rest to get that last little bit. Again, I want to make sure I'm going to clear the tool rest. I can actually get a little bit closer here. Finish this off, and then I'll start all over again. You get to watch this live and in real time as it actually happens. How cool is that? All right. So I've moved my tool rest back. The reason that I'm going from the tailstock to the headstock, moving this way while I'm making my cuts, is that the headstock is a lot more stable than the tailstock is. So there's going to be a little bit, there's still a little bit of vibration. If there is any, it'll be more on this side furthest away from the drive center. So I work my way from possibility of vibration to less possibility of vibration. Bringing it down, we're getting a lot closer. That area of air that I'm cutting, well, it's kind of wide here, but the piece was oblong to begin with. But the amount of time that I'm spending cutting air is lessening as I get cut into the lumber. Now, I'm only cutting as fast as the tool can go, and what I'm trying to achieve is a slow, smooth cut. So slow is smooth, but smooth is fast. So if I have everything lined up properly, the cuts are a lot easier. I'm not fighting anything. I'm not fighting the tool. I'm not fighting the lumber. Should always shut your lathe off completely before you move your tool rest. Oh, and I should always talk about safety. I wear either safety glasses or face shield, and when I'm sanding and there's a lot of dust, I wear a mask. If I'm creating a lot of dust, I don't want to breathe this stuff in. Safety first. Sharp tools also a must. Get back to turning. Howdy, welcome to my channel. Please feel free to introduce yourself in chat. I'd like to get to know you. My name is Dave. All right, so I'll move back now. We're still not round, so I got to keep working my way back down to where it's all round. I think that's actually close. Let's see. Well, we're getting close. We're not quite there yet. I actually need to blow off my computer and apparently cover it with plastic. I am throwing some wood shavings on my computer, and I don't need to be doing that. All right. So I'm getting even less vibration now. I'm getting closer and closer to round. So I'm actually going to speed the lathe up a little bit more. For those that are interested, it will be about 900 or so. But that brings the air spaces, the air gaps, across much faster. So I'm cutting air a lot less a lot. I'm cutting air faster, not as long. Here you can see I'm following cuts that I made previously. I'm just taking them deep further in. I'm leaving the ridges behind because I don't want to dig that wing into the wood. And cause a catch or a catastrophic design change. I'm not the world's biggest fan for catastrophic design changes because sometimes they can really hurt too. All right. Groovy. So we're getting there. Almost there. Let's take a look, see how far down I've got. So this is pretty much, I'll go a little bit deeper. So I'll get rid of that. This will still be present for a little bit. So now we just have this, and now we're down to round all the way around except for this bit. Hogged off a little bit too much there. Tool's starting to get a little bit dull, but I've got a fresh bowl gouge ready to go. I'll finish this pass. All right, let's take a look at it. I'm going to grab my red pen again. So here we see that this is a crack. This is a crack. So I'm looking at and reading the lumber itself. So it tells me stories. How I'm cutting, and the lumber will tell you how it wants to be cut. All right. Fresh bowl gouge. We'll sharpen this one in a little while. Let's see. I've got. Well, let's go back here. So what I did was just a series of push cuts into the lumber. Now I'm going to do a pull cut here and clean this up. See how that did. All right, still got a little bit to go. So I've got basically, I don't know, another 1/4 of an inch or so 5/16 to take this down into. I want to get rid of all of the external flat spots. Pardon me. God. Apparently, a little dust in my throat. So basically, at this point, I'm using it's a pull cut, but I've got a little bit more angle on it than you would a normal pull cut, because I'm kind of using the skew as, or the bowl gouge as a skew. Just to clean this up more. And that's looking pretty good. So clearly there were several branches growing. This one is the one that got broken off. This one looks like it was just absorbed into the tree, because it didn't really see that outside until we got further down in here. So it's like Christmas. You never know what you're going to find. All right, now we have really good visual indication of what we're going to find when we turn this, give it some form beyond the round that it is right now. So we've got that crack, and it does go in about 1.25 inches all the way up to here. So I expect rounding that off, that crack will disappear. I will actually turn off, I'm going to turn off this much just to eliminate this, but also give myself, because I'm going to part off a piece here somewhere. I think I'll probably, crack goes to about there, so I'll probably Do I want to keep that though? Yeah, no, this is cracked, so I want that to be eliminated. Let's see how I'm doing on my width here. So I'm actually really close to the size that I need to be in the first place based upon my calipers. So what that means is I'm just going to go ahead and part all of this off. And I might be able to use this for a smaller box or bowl or something, probably a smaller box, because I'm going to have to take it down in further in about another inch, at least up to this point. So I could round it off there, and this could be the top of whatever I'm going to work with later. So we have a crack here. I think that is, yep, that's a crack. That goes to about there. We have a crack there. Tiny one there. That's a crack. But that doesn't go in very far. About 5/16 of an inch. So what I'm going to do, actually, I may change my mind and start working on this side, because it looks like most of the cracks are going to just disappear for me. Yeah, that looks. All right, so this crack is not very deep. It's all but gone. I'm going to have to go past this. See how I'm doing there. How does that look? That is not a deep crack. All right, I'm going to go a little bit further because there is a check up here that I want to get rid of. And it looks like it stops about 1/4 inch in, so and that's why we don't want to contact the wing. That was a catch, but fortunately it was not catastrophic. Now we turn that away. So this is a very superficial crack. What I want to see is that the checks that were on here are going to be gone, and they are not quite. So I'll move down. Very well could be they go all the way in there, but I hope not. Okay, I'm into really usable lumber now. So I got rid of all those cracks. All right, so I'm going to cut this end off, but I'm going to go ahead and I'll leave this as a tenon so I can turn my insert for the box, and I will part it off I'll leave myself a tenon, so I'll part it off here, and I'll part it off. And what was it? 1/8 of an inch. So I'll go to here. No, let's just go 1.5 inches. Give myself a little bit more to play with. So yeah, right there. So I'll part it off there. This is the piece that I will use for the insert drawer. This is interesting. This is a beetle hole. I don't see a larva in there at the moment, but it is plugged up. So there might actually still be a larva in there. That's kind of interesting. All right, so I've got good solid wood right here. This is what I need for my insert. So I'm going to work to get this parted off and get this formed into a tenon and part it off. In just a moment, I will undo the computer screen so I can see if they're want to borrow TC Schmo. Want to borrow. Hey, man. TC Schmo says, want to borrow a longer tool rest? I know a guy. Thank you. I actually do have one. I've got a 12-inch tool rest. The reason I'm not using it is because I've got a micro adjustment on this tool rest, and it doesn't take very long really to move it over. But thank you for the offer, sir. I actually might take you up on that one of these days because I do have some projects in mind. All right, so let's get this ready for Chuck. Am I cutting? I cannot wait. You know, I cannot wait for, we have our turning club here has a well-known turner, Matt Monaco, coming out to give us some demonstration, and I think classes even in our area, which is awesome. And according to TC Schmo, I haven't met the guy, and I'm really looking forward to meeting him and talking to him. But according to TC Schmo, he is a whiz with a skew. So I really want to get to know this guy so that I can improve my skew skills. All right, so I'm just going to use my skew as a negative rake scraper. Basically, I'm just going to give myself a little bit of a dovetail there. You know, and I don't need a whole lot, so let's mark that off there. That's where I'm going to part it. There's that right there. And then I will part it off here. Let's get crack-a-lacking. So I got basically about 1 inch of tin in there, and I want to leave a little bit of mass. I don't usually part all the way through. I usually cut off the fibers, leave myself a little bit in the center there. I don't want any tear out. By twisting it apart or anything like that. Just another problem I got to clean up later. So I'm just going to run my saw through here, my hand saw. Cut these off and I'll be ready to turn this guy. Loosen up my tailstock there. Move that aside. Oh, I'm making shavings today. Hip hip hurrah. Hey, I also like to talk about bees. It's not just wood turning because I'm also a beekeeper. And I just harvested 25 pounds of honey out of my hives last week. That was awesome. And I checked on them today, and there's quite a bit going in there now. So that's exciting. All right, so I'm going to cut this off. Save that for another project, maybe. We shall see. I can set this guy aside. And get set up for a chuck. As a reminder, I do not get sponsorship funds for talking about the tools that I use yet. This is a Vicmark chuck. I really like this chuck. It's very solid. And if Vicmark would like to give me a sponsorship, I will talk about your chucks all day long. One of these days, I'm going to get a Vicmark 300 lathe. All right. Oh, actually, I want to take a look at this. This isn't going to match the grain perfectly on the piece that I'm working to replace, but it is the same species of tree. One moment. So I got the finished box. It's not going to fit in there yet. I know I have to bring it down, but I want to take a look at, man, actually that's going to be at least close. That's cool. So I want to take a look at the grain and how it lines up so I can determine which side will be my top and which will be my bottom. I guess it doesn't really matter. It's kind of a thinner piece, but so that looked pretty nice. Nope, I like it better this way because this wider grain here matches the wider grain there more closely. So although it's not an exact match because it's not out of the same piece of lumber, it will be close. And it's an insert drawer, so it's not something that, even though it bugs me that it's not a perfect match, that's just me. It won't be noticeable because, for one, it's the same species. It is actually from this exact same tree, just a different part of the tree, but the grain lines up fairly close, so it at least will look very, very groovy. So this is going to be my top. So I'm treating my chuck just like I would treat a drill press. There's more than one place to tighten down, so I go around until they both all feel about the same, just like I would on a drill press. But this is no, can't quite do that yet. We're going to size this. So, oh, what am I doing? I actually have my calipers set for this. I was just going to sneak up on it, but I still will have to, but at least I got a better baseline with my calipers scoring a line. So yeah, I was about 1/8 of an inch is cool. So I'm only going to touch this point to the rotating lumber on the downhill side. I don't want to touch this point because it'll want to take it all the way over. And if it gets caught in the wood, it's going to want to try to crush it into where this is, because that's getting pulled down. And that's just a disaster waiting to happen. So I'm just going to score a line here and then kind of tip this over and see that it matches. And hey, I got it first time. So that's my scored line. I know now basically more or less the depth of cut that I want to make. And I should have checked that. I think I might be a little high with my bowl gouge. Yep. Let's get the sawdust out of this guy. Sawdust in the threads. All right. I like this being able to adjust, because if I let go, adjust with the nut, because if I let go, it's not going to fall down into the banjo. It's just going to stay right where I left it. I suppose I could, no, I'll do that here. Make sure that everything's secure. Okay, so this guy, do a series of shallow push cuts. Almost there. We'll do a scraping action. I think I'm probably still a little bit big. Yep. But hey, it is better to, I can't put stuff back on very easily. It's easy to take it off, but not so easy to put it back on. So still a little bit too big. That's a nice tight fit, but not what I'm looking for. The drawer's got to come out easily and go in easily. All right, still a little tight. Yes, that's the fit I'm looking for. Okay, so we're there. I can put the box away. No, I can't put it away yet. Doggone it. All right, so this is going to be the top. I need to cut it down to size, so I need to lose 3/4 of an inch, it looks like. The rest is too low. And I'm just a tad too close, I think. There we go. Make sure everything's secure. As always, anchor, bevel, and cut. Need to readjust my bevel. Wasn't quite going the direction that I wanted. Just some pressure. Turning does not have to be an overly physical endeavor. I'd rather not beat myself up doing this because I want to be able to do this for a long time. So I'm making micro adjustments with my tiller hand, which would be the hand that's holding the end of the handle. So I can open the flute and close the flute little by little so that I continue to get the best cutting action I can from this tool. I'm going to check my depth here. Almost 3/8 of an inch left to go. So let's see if I think you might be able to see it. Let me clear this flute out real fast. I think you might be able to see what I'm talking about here and where the camera's at. So I'm anchored on my tool rest. I'm anchored on my body here. Get that into camera. So I got my thumbs riding where I want the top of the spine of the tool, if you will, to be. And in this case, it's basically where the flute's about 45 degrees. And I can just make micro adjustments with my tiller hand, opening and closing the flute, and not lose my anchor on my body. Anchor on the tool rest. I want my bevel pointing in direction of travel. Well, here you can see there's nothing coming over the flute, so I'm not on the bevel. Get myself to where I just right there see little tiny angel hair shavings coming off. That's a cut. Now I know my bevel's going in the right direction, so I can just pull off, take a depth cut. Slow is smooth, smooth is fast. Check my depth. I'm pretty sure I'll have to take off a little more, but I would rather sneak up on it. It's got to sit just right inside the cavity. At least in my opinion, so that it looks nice. Anchor, bevel. I can check myself here. I can see shavings coming off, so I know I'm pointed right. I'm not going the full depth I probably need to go, but that's all right. I'm just going to sneak up on this. Just some pressure. Actually, I could take my thumb away and it'll kind of self-feed because I'm anchored here, and I'm moving my body with the tool. I'm actually just leaning forward as fast as the tool can cut. With enough practice, you'll find that most cuts are just finesse. It's a matter of lining yourself up before you make the cut. All right, so wow, I have less than 1/8 of an inch there, so I'm just going to shave off a bit, and then my depth or my height for the drawer will be good. In this case, I don't yet need to go all the way across because all I'm looking at is where the drawer sits, the insert drawer sits on this ledge. So this isn't going to contact the bottom. I'm just looking for my depth. All right, with sanding, that will be perfect. And we'll wind up rounding this edge over a little bit and sanding just that surface because that's all end grain. So I can put my box away now. Get it out of the way because golly, it's filling up with shavings every time I do something. Pardon me while I blow off my computer again. Oh, good. Air compressor is turned off. Let me cover up my computer here real quick. Bear with me. All right. So I'm just going to scrape a radius. Doesn't have to be anything super awesome. I'm taking the sharp corner off, giving myself a nice radius. It's a light touch. Now I can hit it with the sandpaper. Well, actually, no, I'm going to wait on that. I'm going to start dishing it out. So I have basically 1.25 inches. I'm going to go no more than 1 inch deep on this guy. I'm not there yet, but I'm just checking my depth. That's about 1/2 inch. That should be close to 3/4, I hope. Yep. bit of a skate, but I was presenting the tool incorrectly. I hit the point before I actually had the bevel going, but I was able to recover it. Turn the lathe off. As I was going in at that, when you heard that skate, it's because I contacted the point first before I had my bevel totally lined up. So that point dug in and wanted the spinning action of the wood wanted to take me out. I was able to recover really, really quick, so it didn't damage anything. Something to pay attention to. Switching to a spindle gouge shortly. Let's check our depth here. About 7/8. So I'm going to start working this way with a spindle gouge, which means I'll need to raise my tool rest because I want my end cut to be on center where the tool steel is parallel with the ways of the bed. And I'm going to work on a wall thickness here. Now I need to take this down because my handle is going to have to be above that, or not any higher than, not too much higher than the rim of this. The lid for the box is got a dome on the inside, but it's not a big one. So I have to pay attention to what I'm doing here so that when this fits in and the handle is attached to my drawer, that the lid will also still fit on. All right, double check my depth here real quick. See any new questions? Okay, no new questions. I'm still at 7/8. So I've got a little bit more room to play with, but I'm working on my wall thickness here. I'm going to grab my homemade box scraper. This is a spindle gouge. This used to be a spindle gouge. What I did was, when I got to the end of the life on the flute there, I ground it flat, ground it down halfway through the tool steel, so that now with a box scraper, and then I put a chamfer on the end. So I've got a square end, and this side is a scraper, and this side is a scraper. This side is a scraper too, but I'm not ever going to use that because that means I'd have to be over here, and it makes no sense. And they're just trying to carry me around. So I'm going to use my box scraper to straighten out the wall here. And now that that's done, double check my depth. Go to the lowest point. That is not the lowest point. That is still at 7/8, so I'm doing fine. So essentially what I'm doing here is a push cut, but essentially from the other side of the lathe. I am pulling it toward me, but it is technically a push cut because the cutting edge is leading the handle here. Give myself a fairly square bottom. I don't want, it doesn't have to be perfectly square. There can be a little bit of a radius there, but I want that bottom to be fairly level. And right now it is. So I'm still at 7/8. Do I want to go the extra eighth? Yeah, I think I do. So I'm going to switch up. And I am going to go with this tool. Now this is just a 10 millimeter high-speed steel tool blank that I have turned into a makeshift beading and parting tool, if you will, but it's just got one edge. At some point I'm actually going to make the second edge, but this is a wonderful scraper setup. And once I get my depth, then I will use my skew to clean it up. Because it has a wider blade, if you will, wider tool surface to make contact with the bottom of the insert. So let's check this. Okay, my wall is not parallel inside to out. I've got my ruler laid up against it, and if I look at the ways of the bed, it points out that way. So I got to clean that up. Take a look here. We're almost parallel. Whoops. Oh, there's a magnet. And there we are. I can see now that it's parallel with the ways of the bed. So the wall is parallel. The inside wall is parallel to the outside. That's what I was looking for. Let's double check my depth here. Here I've got 15/16. Here I've got almost that. So I can clean this up now with my skew. I'm going to hone it really quickly before I do this. And let me round. I'm just going to do a scrape here just around this edge. And then I'll hit it with a little bit of sandpaper because all this here is all end grain. Make sure my skew's set at the right height. Oh, I'm going to need to take that down some first though. So let's grab my spindle gouge and my handle material, which is another piece of antler. So that's going to have to be quite a bit. Well, not quite a bit. It's just going to have to be smaller. So I need to adjust my tool rest. There we go. No new questions on the chat. All right. No new comments. Observations, witticisms, criticisms. At some point when I have my second camera, you'll be able to see the cuts that I'm making inside the form that you can't see now. Okay, I'm going to set this right up here and see how much I could. Oh, you know what? That's going to be just fine. All right, so my tenon now for my handle, I am at a place that I'm happy with. Do I have enough of a chamfer? It appears to be, but I'm going to cup it just a little bit more. Then I'm going to find my center point right on inside that tenon, because I'm going to take a 1/4 inch router bit and cut in the socket for my handle material. Then I will finish the bottom inside of this insert. Then I will flip it around on the chuck and finish the bottom from the other side and put finish on it, and it will be a done deal. Actually, I'll finish this before I even ever flip it. So let's go ahead and get that drilled. If I can break my live center out. It's time for the Jacob's chuck. There we are. Throw my center pin in there so my Jacob's chuck does not, and I can open up my computer now. And I can see more clearly what's happening on the screen. So I just have a 1/4 inch, just a 1/4 inch router bit. It's a Freud. No, I don't get paid to promote these, although I'd be willing to. I just put it in my Jacob's chuck. It is the perfect diameter for what I'm trying to do here. And instead, as opposed to, let's pull one out, as opposed to a Forstner bit, which I could use, the Forstner bit has a little awl at the very front. So that is, and on this one, it's about 1/8 of an inch. But on the bigger ones, it can be 3/16 of an inch. So that's 3/16 of an inch of a hole after the bottom, the flat bottom. This is already cut. I suppose you could probably run the Forstner bit without that little brad point on there. I wouldn't recommend it because it helps keep the Forstner bits from traveling. Could use a regular drill bit, but I want a flat bottom on this guy on the inside when I cut this in for my handle. I want a flat bottom. And I don't want to take any chance of going all the way through like with the Forstner bit where my tolerances are kind of tight, like with this piece. They're a little tight. But it needs to fit in that cavity, that recess inside the box just right. so that it has room in the box. And this is another great thing in why it's the same lumber species, is that it will move the same as the other piece will, even though it's not from that same chunk that I took off earlier, that piece that exploded, which, well, it didn't explode. But she came free of the lathe. I've got it in one of my buckets now. She came free of the lathe. I'm sorry, I'm not really sure where I was going with that, but regardless, I just wanted to cut this with this router bit, and the router bit works just fine in the Jacob's chuck. I'm down to the lowest speed I can go on my lathe, which is 400 for this Jet 1440 Reeves drive, and I'm just going to cut that in there. I don't remember. Let's measure this. So I got to go a little bit deeper in. But I've got, 3/4 of an inch of material that I can actually drill through or hollow out or make a cavity in, or however else you want to put that. I got to go in a little bit further, and that will fit just right. Do a test fit. Okay, that sits right where I want it to, and my concavity there matches the convex bottom of the button. So I'm happy with that. All right, so I'm going to take all this stuff, put it away, and go clean up the bottom of this insert with my skew. What I do with it, there it is. Old toothbrushes are indispensable for cleaning off things. And it's nylon bristles. Even a brass brush will work pretty good. It won't bung up any sharp edges that you have on your tool. I don't like using steel wire brushes, because that can really bung out a nicely sharpened edge. Okay, so that's all set. I'm going to move my tailstock aside, put my toothbrush back into its holder, and adjust the height of my tool rest for my skew. I want to have a little bit of a downward angle. I don't need much, because this will be acting as a negative rake scraper. But I still got to get the height, proper height, for the best cutting action from the tool. So I'm at parallel now. I'm going to go up just a wee bit. We'll go 30-degree extra turn. Or rather, I'm sorry, I guess that'd be 120, wouldn't it? 6-sided, 120 degrees. Okay, now I'm going to hone this guy. Once I determine where I have placed my diamond card, which is over here. And I need a piece of leather. There we go. Because I'm also going to strop it. I don't know if, you can see that in the camera. Very cool. Cool. I'm basically just removing any burr that's on there. this time. I like having a burr on a skew if I'm using it as a scraper, but on this skew, I don't want to leave a burr on it because of the way that I'm using this skew. So when you speed the lathe up, I tilt it down a little bit, and I do actually like to have a slight radius to my skews. I like the cutting action that it does. It makes it a little bit different cutting beads, but not so terribly much as opposed to a straight grind skew. But this lets me, like in this case where I'm touching on the bottom, I can just use a portion of the skew and then roll over and use a different portion and different portion. To clean up, the bottom inside of this insert. And as you can see, I'm really pulling off super fine tissue shavings on the bottom of this thing. With the burr, I could do even better shavings, but this works for the purpose that I'm going for. Okay, let's take a look at this. How does that look to me? A little bit more cleanup. There we go. Double check my depth. I am 30 seconds shy of 1 inch. That works. Okay, so the inside's done. I've got the slight radius there, slight radius there. I need to put a slight radius on the bottom, but I'm gonna, and I'll do that with when it's turned around to the other side. No, I'll do it now. And I'll just scrape it in here with my skew. Everything's going to clear there. That's good. So I have to pay attention now to the grain when I'm rounding these corners over. The grain is running parallel to the ways of the bed. So if I try to go from the back and curl it over this way, it's going to try to peel up those fibers because there's nothing to support this outside. There's nothing pressing against this. So I need to go downhill to the fibers. So I'll start from this edge and work my way to the bottom. And it's just a light touch. I just need to put a little bit of a radius on it, I'm going to go over it once with 220. That looks good to me. That way, these fibers are supported as I'm going down, as opposed to if I'm trying to come up and tear in, I won't have any tear out. Okay. It looks pretty good. Sandpaper. Now, I don't need to sand the inside of this. I've scraped the bottom and it's fairly smooth, and my box scraper took care of the sides here. So all I'm going to do is just run sandpaper around the outside. With a little bit of air power, and I'm going to have to mute the microphone while my air compressor is running. And wear a mask. Okay. Mask is on. I'm going to kill the audio here, just so I can run my air tool and you're not having to listen to it. All right. That did not take long at all. Now I can put my finish on inside and out, flip it around, and turn the bottom. I really do like the glow that the orange oil and the walnut oil and the beeswax give to the lumber that I've turned in my blend, my paste polish here. Hey, TC Schmo, I don't know if you're still there, man, but you had some good success with this, right? All right, Lays down to about 400. That's the slowest speed I can go. Now I'm just gonna do the work. Oops. Safety glasses, safety first. Okay, now run it till there's no color on my towel. Groovy. So now we have an almost finished insert drawer. So this is the inside. This will be the handle that will be glued in. So I'm going to spin this around on my chuck in expansion mode. I think actually I'm going to use my straight side chuck if it'll open wide enough. Let's find out. Whoops. The threaded insert came out of my chuck here. I've got a 1-inch spindle, and this is an 1.25" one reducer for my lathe. Cool, that got it. I'm dreaming of the day when I will have a lathe that has an 1.25" or an 1.5" spindle. Just because of the torque that it can handle. All right, need the key. So what this is going to let me do is, since it's a straight side, it's going to get all the way down into the corner. And since this is flat, it's going to register right on top of the chuck here. Because the body of the chuck is a lot smaller diameter than this, I can open those jaws up and get it all the way down in there. And any tool marks that show up from the chuck, it's assuming this will actually work, will look like a feature. Let's line this up. Let's see. I want in a straight line. Okay, I'm lining this up to where you see I've got corners here on the chuck jaws. So I'm lining up my grain in that direction so that the grain is running this way and it will follow that, so that if there is any tool mark in there, again, it will look more natural because it's going with the grain. And I just need to get it expanded tightly enough to hold on to it really well. I'm going to bring up my tailstock just to hog off this tenon really quick, and then I'm going to do the finesse bit to just take the bottom off. Let's get my air hose out of the way. Don't need that at the moment. Give myself, set myself up here. I'm a little high. I'm going to use my bowl gouge just because it's a bigger tool. It can handle more stress than my spindle gouge can. I don't need this leather right now. Boy, I think I'm starting to sound like I'm running stream of consciousness as I go. This might be a good thing. I don't know. I'm assuming, oh, I'm all by myself. At least it appears that way. But I'm assuming, just going to make the assumption that somebody's listening. And so I'm just going to keep talking and explaining what I'm doing here. Who knows? Somebody might see the replay. They do hang around for about 14 days on Twitch. Nope, I'm going too far. I was just trying to find my center for my bull gouge. I need to bring up the tailstock. And I don't need the tool rest to be in the way of my center here. Now, that point is still out. And actually, I'm going to adjust that because it doesn't need to be out that far anymore. But I do have enough of a tenon that it really doesn't matter all that much. But let's make the hole as small as we can. We don't need to make it any bigger than necessary, right? So I just need to hold that in place with the tailstock because I'm going to hog this off real quick. Well, I'm not going to actually hog it off. I'm going to take 2 cuts to do it, but I could do it with 1. Let me get my tool rest in a little bit tighter to the action. So I got my anchor set. Check my bevel. Look, I got a cut. I can see that stuff coming over, so I'm ready to go. My flute is at about 45 degrees, and I can just go for it now. Actually, I think I'll just finish off the bottom with my bow gouge. And then I'll get rid of that with my skew or spindle gouge. And I don't even know that I need to sand that, but I'll scrape it for sure. And then maybe sand it, and then that'll be finished. And it'll be a done deal. So while I still got the tailstock in place, just going to sneak up on that tenon. I have not adjusted my tool rest. Now I can pull this away because I don't have much to remove. Anymore. And I can adjust my tool rest for the cut I want to make with my spindle gouge. So I am below center. Still a little bit below. That'll work right there. Let's take it down 120 degrees. Still high. Now this Oh, too far. Back 60. All right. I'm also going to double check to make sure that the chuck itself is not trying to loosen up due to vibration. It is an expansion mode. It's not trying to grip anything. It's trying to push it apart. And I'm just taking light cuts. Now I'll scrape the bottom. Although I do have to adjust my tool rest. I'll hone my skew one last time. Parallel, that's my center, so a little higher than that. That looks good there. I'll drop the nut. Oh, that's too high. We don't need to be that high. No, that'll work right there. So I'm tilting the tool at a little bit of a downward angle. For one, that is a much safer cut or much safer scrape than trying to go upward or sometimes even dead end, because I'm going to be catching whatever that little edge, the very, very edge of that thing. And there is actually a little micro burr on there, even though you can't see it. And that's what I want to contact the wood. So let's drop it and see. I may not need to hone it again. It's not bad. I am going to use this guy. You know, I need to make that straighter. Yeah, I do. All right. So what I did not take a look at, I want this to be a flat bottom. And I didn't make that. So I'm going to do it now. We'll check that. Just a little bit of a hump right in dead center. So back out here. Hey. There we go. All right. Now I can go back to the skew. Raise it up just a bit. Put a little burr on that one. We'll go back to this guy. And there we are. So let's take a little look at the bottom of this guy. All right, I can hit with a sander real quick. It's not going to take much at all, actually. Let's kill the audio. Oops. All righty, back with audio. So now I just need to put finish on the bottom of this. Put this guy away. Down to about 400. Oh, I really like the smell of beeswax. I love the smell of orange oil. And I'm getting both right in the snooter right now. That's awesome. Okay, polish it off so there's no color on the towel. Very good. Grab my key. And that's the finished bottom. So there's the drawer insert. Let's put all this together. And actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab my auxiliary bench rest for my banjo. Now, this is just a 1-inch dowel drilled into a pine that was covered with Formica. 1-inch dowel was made to fit my banjo, and it's just a bench platform that I can use on my lathe to raise things up a little bit when I'm carving or things like that nature, where I need a little bit closer look at what's happening. All right, that's the lid. This is the handle for this guy. All right, so let's find that grain line up. We were at here. So if I'm looking straight down, let me turn it. There we go. You can see that the grain here is very close to what's happening here. Even though this came from another section of this tree, the grain is still similar enough, at least part where it grew. See, if I had to turn this over this way and made this the top, now you can see, let's flip that. No, we don't need to flip it around. So we have the same scalloped shapes, but here on this side, they come together very close. Here, they really don't. They come together closer over on this side. So I did actually choose correctly. This will fit in there and look like it was made to be there if you look at the grain. So that will be the insert drawer. It fits right there. That will be the handle for this guy. And that's the lid. And it fits perfectly. I love it when the grain lines up. I think that's just absolutely lovely. So there we have it. We have now what we should have had last night, a finished insert drawer that fits right in here. All I need to do now is use some adhesive to fix that to my insert. And it's a finished piece. That's it. That's all there is, folks. Nice. Nice. And let's see, what's the time limit on that? Since I'm just kind of curious, talking a bunch, how long have we been recording? 2 hours. So that was a 2-hour walkthrough of processing lumber, turning something out of a piece of that lumber into a finished product that fits in this particular box. 2 hours. Not bad with all the talking, I'm thinking. I'm glad I started this channel. It's helping me out a lot. I get to talk about the things that I really enjoy doing, and the more I talk about the processes and the tool control and all that, the better it cements it in my own head. And my goal is that hopefully you have learned something useful, or at least enjoyed yourself while you were here checking out my channel, listen to me talk about what I'm doing. Bring the camera back up. Get the top of my bald head. All right, so this is the finished box. The handle itself is not attached yet, so we'll just take that out. This is the insert. I'm going to tip it out. It fits right in there. So there's a hollow in the bottom. That fits right on top. And the lid goes on. And the grain lines up. And I just think it's gorgeous when that happens. I love it when the grain tells the story. And the grain is the main feature. So cool. We got a nice little whatnot box. All right. So again, my name is Dave Reif. I'm going to wrap this one up today because I accomplished what I wanted to accomplish. This was an unscheduled broadcast, but I do intend to broadcast not just Tuesday nights, but Tuesday and Wednesday nights from now on. That will, when it appears on my schedule, is when it will be available. Hopefully it won't be next week. I will be up in the UP working with bees. So we might get, I think I actually had to cancel next week's broadcast. I'm not sure. I'll have to double check, but the week after. So again, thank you for joining me. Thank you for hanging out. Thank you for the comments that you place in. I hope that you come back and join me again next time. Again, it's Tuesday and Wednesday nights, 8 p.m. to 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Eastern Standard Time. Let me slow down. I started turning as therapy for PTSD. Found out that it is amazing therapy, not just for PTSD, and that I had a knack for it, and I fell in love with turning itself. So I am doing my best to pass this on. And I love it so much. I want to make a living at it. There are no secrets in wood turning. I don't care who you talk to. If they say there's secrets, then they're holding something back, and it's not going to help you out. I've got no secrets. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. If you don't understand the way something's being done, please feel free to ask. I will explain it. A lot of what I do is the result of hours and hours and hours of practice. That would be the most important item that I could share with you, is to get behind the wheel and drive. Get behind the lathe and practice. It's okay that you make mistakes. I had a turner tell me that the material that we work with grows on trees, and you're not using the whole tree, right? You're using just a small part of it. So if that piece doesn't work out or whatever, move it aside, get another one, put it on the lathe, and go at it again and practice, practice, practice. Learn how to use the tools, learn the proper way to use your tools, and keep them sharp and in service. They will make you a happier turner. Cut only as fast as the tool can cut, and you will be a happier turner. I don't like to fight what's happening on the lathe. I'm always trying to remove vibration, any incidents. I had an incident last night. Nothing was damaged. I was in an expansion mode. You can look at the video, the previous video, and I think they keep them on Twitch for 14 days. And you can see what happened. I got a catch. I approached the piece with my bevel not lined up. That's exactly what happened. And because the piece was in expansion mode, the chuck was in expansion mode, it just broke it apart. Yeah, it spun off the lathe, but nothing was damaged. It just shattered, which was really, really nice. I hate it when things fly off the lathe. It's not very often. It's very rare, actually, that it happens, but it happened last night. But the thing is that I refuse to let those things stop me. It's just another lesson, something to remind myself what I need to pay attention to so that I have a safe, happy experience. And those are the things that I'm trying to share and that I want to share. I wish to share with other people who are considering to becoming wood turners or who are turners now. Regardless of what your skill level is, it doesn't matter. If I have something that can help you, I want to share it with you. So, having said that, thank you again for watching this unscheduled broadcast. I enjoyed myself. I hope you did too. We have a finished piece now. As soon as the handle on that lid is set, the adhesive is set, that's going in the store. It will be available. I hope you have a pleasant evening. I'll see you next time. Please view my schedule to know when my next broadcast time is. Maybe next week, but I'm pretty sure it will be the week following. And I will see you coming around again. Take care.